The story began with a chaotic image. The press, dozens of them, swarming around a single figure like bees to honey. In the center of the crowd stood a tall, blonde-haired young man dressed in a sharply tailored suit. His bangs fell low, completely covering his eyes, and his lips were frozen in a tight, unreadable line as he looked down in silence. Microphones were thrust toward him from every angle as reporters hurled questions over one another. Some urged him to say a few words. Others demanded confirmation about the A-rank gate. Had he really resolved it on his own? A few pushed further, asking if he had truly subdued an S-rank hunter during the recent dungeon break. Still unsatisfied, another voice cut through the noise, accusing him of concealing his true awakening level. As the cameras zoomed in, the crowd was given its first real look at him. His face, pale and expressionless, held a quiet confusion. His deadpan eyes, though hidden behind his hair in person, were captured clearly on screen, lifeless, staring straight into the souls of everyone watching. Meanwhile, his mind was in turmoil. The fact that I made money off this whole hunter job, that was pure coincidence, he thought, still standing before the press in complete silence. It wasn't strength or ability that had brought him here. Not really. It's not because I have the kind of power these people are giving me credit for. It was just luck and a bit of bluffing. The shouting continued, but to him, it was all static. He couldn't even make out the questions anymore. Yeah, he admitted inwardly. In short, I'm just a piece of crap. I don't even understand what they're saying right now. Suddenly, one of the reporters asked, "What are your future plans?" And this time, he responded, quietly, yet audibly. "Plans?" he echoed, lifting his head slightly, his voice hoarse. "If I had a plan, would things have turned out like this?" He looked down again, his shoulders slumping under the weight of the situation. Inside, the fear crept back in. My actual level, it's barely equivalent to an F rank. If the world finds out, what happens then? A nervous gulp followed as he imagined the fallout. First of all, those S-rank hunters everyone thinks I subdued. They'd probably kill me on the spot the moment they learn the truth. And that top ranker I made enemies with in the gate? There's no way he'd let me off the hook. He clutched his head, fingers trembling as they pressed against the sides of his face. I might even get cursed for all this. Damn. This is a complete disaster. Still, the cameras rolled. The questions flew. And in the middle of it all, the young man stood frozen, wrapped in silence, hiding a secret that could very well cost him everything. The scene cut to a crowded train car, where a group of passengers were fixated on their screens, watching a live stream of the press conference on YouTube. All eyes were on the young man at the center of the storm, Hunter Kim Jae-ryok. Back on screen, Jae-ryok, still surrounded by reporters, finally lifted his head slightly. His voice was quiet, dry. About what I'm going to do from now on, he trailed off, eyes unfocused. I'd say no comment. The live comment section erupted. Dozens of messages flashed across the screen, unfiltered, raw, and relentless. A brief silence fell over the crowd, but it didn't last long. The reporters, ever hungry, resumed their attack, shouting questions over each other. Their voices rang out in waves, some demanding clarification, others throwing accusations, all while pushing closer, their tone growing more obnoxious by the second. Still looking down, Kim Jae-ryok clenched his fists tightly. His knuckles turned white as he thought grimly to himself. Either way, it's already ruined. No matter what the headlines say tomorrow. His grip tightened. But letting people continue to misunderstand like this, it's no different from letting this damn hunter's job drag me deeper into the mud. Just then, one of the reporters shouted his name for the first time, the crowd echoing it with a mix of recognition and hunger. Hunter Kim Jae-ryok. At that moment, at his breaking point, Jae-ryok finally looked up. His face was grim, his expression hardened. With a sharp breath, he snapped, "I said a no comment, you mammal brats." A stunned silence followed. The reporters blinked, confused. Huh? What did you just say? But the moment passed quickly. Realizing what had been said, they exploded again. This time, even louder. Hunter Kim Jae-ryok. Please clarify what you just said. Mammals? What on earth do you mean? Theories began to form among them. Some whispered that only an S-rank hunter could show that kind of audacity in front of the press and get away with it. No F-rank would ever dare or survive. But Kim Jae-ryok didn't flinch. He stood tall, still, completely unfazed by the chaos. His expression remained blank, unimpressed, even as the reporters, now equal parts aggravated and desperate, pleaded with him to calm down and just answer their questions. His lips parted slightly. No words came, but a new train of thought began. Yeah, whether they find out I'm actually some powerful being hiding my strength, or they discover I'm nothing but dead weight. It doesn't matter. I won't be on this rotten planet for much longer, anyway. He exhaled slowly, eyes distant. When did everything start going wrong? And then, as if rewinding the entire story, he thought to himself, let's run it back. From the very beginning, from the point I decided to resign. A beat passed. But first, let's clarify something. I wasn't originally a resident of this planet. I came from a world with an incredibly advanced magical civilization. And on that world, I held the title of the strongest wizard, a role that carried immense weight. But then, something shifted. One day, I just snapped. I had an epiphany. I needed to quit. The thought still felt surreal. That job was treated like a form of social service. No matter how hard I worked, I wasn't paid. The standard schedule was 640 days a year. No holidays. Not one. Thanks to advanced technology, food and sleep were rendered unnecessary. The work never ended. Overtime was just life. His thoughts turned bitter. When was the last time I actually got to leave work on time? And what about this? And that? He groaned internally. Damn it. The real problem is, how do I resign? But it wasn't that simple. Given my role, quitting wasn't just frowned upon, it was impossible. Safeguards were built to prevent people like me from abandoning their posts. If I tried to teleport away, I'd get electrocuted straight to the brain. If I somehow escaped the site, where would I hide? The rulers had the entire planet under surveillance. His eyes narrowed. Then what if I killed my superiors? The idea hit a wall instantly. No good. I'm bound by laws that prevent me from harming anyone from my home planet. The clause even applies to myself. I can't even commit suicide. A bitter laugh echoed in his mind. So yeah, quitting was never going to be easy. While he had been contemplating resignation from his duties, a single groundbreaking thought came to him. Wait, while they can restrict my body with magic, the soul isn't bound, right? There's still no magic that can confine souls. That realization lit a fire in him. If the soul could move freely, then escape was still possible. Fueled by this hope, he devoted himself to studying the concept of soul liberation. Years passed, 10, to be exact, marked by tireless research, countless failures, and an unrelenting obsession. And finally, after all that time, he did it. He succeeded in creating the one and only soul-based magic, manipulation of the soul. By separating his soul from his physical form, he found a way to send it far beyond the reach of those who would pursue him, to a distant planet. It worked. Triumphant, he had shouted, I knew it. I'm a genius. Finally, I'm leaving this damn place. And with a grin stretching ear to ear, he declared to the skies, You fools. Good luck managing this planet without me. I'm resignin'. Thus began the first recorded case in history of both possession and reincarnation. His soul soared across the cosmos and descended upon a distant world, Earth, taking root inside a newly vacated human vessel. When he opened his eyes as a human for the first time, there were tears. His vision blurred as he slowly moved his fingers, raising them close to his face. Confusion swelled within him. The unfamiliar sensation made him recoil slightly. What is this? He thought, horrified. Some sort of long, protein mass is moving. His fingers, so strange, so soft and fleshy, twitched under his command. Peering more closely, he sighed in relief. Fortunately, it looks like the soul left this body not too long ago. He brought his hand to his jaw, mimicking a gesture he often used in his former body. It worked. It really worked, he thought, pride swelling in his chest. Reincarnation is child's play when you're me. Sparkles seemed to shimmer around him as he basked in his success. Still relishing the moment, he decided to test his vocal cords.
Danmi.
Hello. His voice cracked awkwardly, but he repeated the words a second time and nodded in satisfaction. He shifted into a sitting position on the worn mattress beneath him. Even the language substitution feels completely natural, he mused. No issues moving the body either. Then, catching his reflection faintly in a nearby surface, he noticed something unusual. His eyes, glowing red, unmistakably inhuman. He tilted his head. But why is it only this much? Something was wrong. According to his plan, he should have inherited the host's memories seamlessly, so perfectly, in fact, that even the boy's own parents wouldn't suspect the soul had changed. Yet the memories weren't there, not properly, just broken fragments and scattered images. A sudden jolt of pain struck him deep in the abdomen, pulling a sharp gasp from his lips. "What's this?" he muttered, gripping his stomach. A stabbing pain.
Panic set in.
Damn it. Did something go wrong again? His vision blurred. The dizziness overwhelmed him. He collapsed. Moments later, with a jolt of realization, he sat up, eyes wide and horror-struck. Damn it, he thought. This body, starved to death. Before activating the reincarnation magic, the former Grand Sorcerer had set a few strict conditions for the spell to follow. Rule number 1. Reincarnate into the creature with the highest magic power on the planet. His logic was simple. If magic potential was guaranteed, high intelligence would naturally follow. But there was one critical oversight. Clutching his aching stomach, he grimaced and muttered to himself, I didn't account for the condition of the body. He had once arrogantly believed it wouldn't matter. Even if the host was a single-celled organism, he would make it work. But this was far worse than expected. A sharp pain surged through him again, making him grit his teeth. It feels like someone poured acid straight into my stomach, he thought bitterly, biting his lip in frustration. With effort, he crawled away from the thin mattress and tried to rise. The magic isn't functioning properly right after reincarnation, he muttered, still clutching his gut. I guess I need time to adapt to the magic system of this planet. After a struggle, he managed to stand, bracing himself with one hand on the wall, the other pressing firmly against his stomach. To stop this pain, I need to put anything in my stomach, he thought. Steeling himself, he opened the front door of the modest room and was immediately greeted by a blinding radiance. It was the first time he had seen daylight. Back on his home planet, most habitats were submerged in thick liquid. Starlight barely penetrated the surface, and his world was perpetually dark and tinted in deep shades of blue. But this place, Earth, was entirely different. As sunlight poured down, reflecting off modern glass buildings and bathing the world in warmth and brilliance, he stood frozen. He felt the solid, dry ground under his feet. He gazed up at the endless sky, painted in vibrant blue, with floating patches of fluffy white clouds. For a moment, he forgot the pain. Bright, warm, dry air, solid earth. This planet, it's the opposite of mine, he thought, entranced by the spectacle of daylight and life all around him. But reality came crashing back in the form of a deep, hollow ache. His stomach growled violently, reminding him of the danger. Snapping out of his trance, he shook his disheveled head and muttered, This isn't the time to stand around. I need to find something to eat. He wandered through the streets, but no matter how far he searched, he found nothing edible, no food, no scraps, no sustenance. Frustrated and dizzy from hunger, he stumbled near a small blue car and shouted into the sky, What the hell? What kind of planet is this? The sun beamed down mockingly in reply. Falling to his knees on the pavement, his vision darkened at the edges. Everything was fading to gray. No wonder this body starved to death, he thought grimly. Now sprawled flat on the road, his breathing shallow, he whispered, At this rate, I'm going to die of starvation again. Then, out of the corner of his eye, something moved. He tilted his head weakly and saw it, a cockroach. His stomach churned, but his instinct screamed louder than his pride. It's an insect? But it's so small, he hesitated. But there was no time to be picky.
No, not now.
Pride won't save me. With trembling hands, he picked up the insect. Just before biting into it, he gave silent thanks for the miserable meal, his dignity discarded in the face of survival. Right about then, he saw a young boy walking by, coolly dressed in sneakers, a backpack slung over one shoulder, a blue face cap, and an orange-flavored ice cream in hand. The boy seemed entirely disinterested in his surroundings, so much so that he didn't even notice the disheveled man sprawled on the ground. As the MC's eyes locked onto the glistening orange ice cream, a spark of hope lit up in his mind. It's one of my kind, he thought, marveling at the sight of another human. He continued musing. A kid. No. Is it more like a young'un? Is that the term? But what is that in its mouth? Drooling uncontrollably, he flicked the roach away and muttered aloud. It's food, obviously, and it looks like it would taste pretty good. Weighing his options with great reluctance, he asked himself, should I steal it or not? Torn between morals and hunger, he stood up and began following the young boy like a sketchy shadow. As they passed a police emergency poster, the boy suddenly stopped, sensing something wasn't quite right. He turned slightly to glance behind him, and his gaze met with that of the MC's. Wild-eyed, exhausted, and practically foaming at the mouth. A bead of sweat trickled down the boy's temple before he bolted, running as fast as his little legs could carry him.
Wait.
Wait, the MC called out weakly, but the boy didn't bother looking back a second time. Unable to chase him, the MC sighed in defeat and turned around, only to spot a flower bed nearby. What's that? He said, stepping closer to investigate. A small sign beside the plant read, for ornamental use. It doesn't seem edible, but it's better than stealing someone else's food, he muttered, grabbing a handful of flowers. He brought the bundle toward his mouth and whispered, this is tasty grass. Very tasty grass. Just as he was about to take a bite, a sudden, startling sound pierced the air. The MC froze, his eyes snapping upward. That sound. Was it the kid's scream? He wondered aloud. Dropping the flowers to the ground, he took cautious steps toward the source of the sound. I need to check why he suddenly screamed, he said, his expression shifting from desperation to concern. The young boy trembled where he stood, his limbs frozen with terror as he let out incoherent whimpers. His wide eyes stared ahead in absolute horror. A monster? He thought, as the camera panned to reveal a grotesque beast looming in front of him. The creature, having spotted the boy, let out a guttural screech and charged. Snapping out of his frozen daze, the boy screamed and bolted, his sneakers slamming against the pavement. But the monster was fast, far too fast. With its massive wings beating and a screech that pierced the air, it opened its beak, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth, and lunged. It managed to snag the boy's backpack, lifting it high into the air. The boy, however, slipped from the straps and tumbled to the ground. His face twisted in pain as he landed hard, barely managing to keep hold of his orange ice cream, now squished and dripping down his wrist. Groaning and trying to get up, he heard a loud thud behind him. Turning, his eyes met the monster's once again. It was right there. The boy sprang to his feet and ran, shrieking for help as the creature thrashed behind him, tearing through streetlights and signs, destroying anything in its path as it tried to snatch him up once more. Somebody help me, he screamed, voice cracking. Just as the beast was about to strike again, the boy rounded a corner. The monster missed, hindered by a tangled mess of electric wires that sparked and zapped at its body. In that moment, the boy stumbled upon Kim Jae-ryok, who was just arriving at the scene. Jae-ryok's eyes widened as he spotted the massive creature writhing in frustration, its beak snapping, electricity crackling around it. His voice calm, he muttered, "It's a bird, but it's as big as a house." Watching the chaos unfold, he scratched his head and muttered in disbelief, "Just walking down the street and running into this? What the hell is this planet?"
He sighed.
A truly wretched place. But then his eyes narrowed.
Wait, hold on.
Maybe this is actually a good thing. His stomach growled. A spark twinkled in his eye. This body, it definitely has memories of that thing. He licked his lips. I can eat birds. Drooling slightly, he leaned forward with anticipation. Finally, a weird animal worthy of being prey. As the bird shrieked in rage, still tangled in the wires, Kim stood unbothered, completely unfazed by its threatening posture. The beast glared at him. How dare this human ignore its presence? But Kim simply rubbed the bridge of his nose with a smirk, a confident twinkle dancing around him. As the strongest Grand Sorcerer, I could kill that monster with just a cough. Once I've fully adapted to this planet's magic. He looked around, admiring the magical swirls rising from the monster's body and the air around them, thick and vibrant. This energy, it's incredible. I can feel it surging through every cell. His expression grew serious, awestruck. This is Earth's magic. But then, as he tried to stand tall and bask in the overwhelming power, his legs buckled. He collapsed to all fours, gritting his teeth. The sheer pressure of the magic weighed down on him like a mountain. There's so much, he gasped, eyes wide, veins popping. Too much. His body trembled. If the magic on other planets is like a small bucket, then this is a whole ocean. Despite the strain, he grinned with greedy delight. How can such a golden land exist? Feeling an overwhelming surge of energy, the former alien Grand Sorcerer, now in human form, grinned to himself. With magic this abundant, there's nothing I can't do, he thought, eyes sparkling with delight. The joy of reincarnation was still fresh as he basked in the sensation of magic pulsing through him. But his daydream was suddenly interrupted by a panic shout. Mister, please help. Aw no, Uncle. A young boy, out of breath and visibly terrified, came sprinting toward him. The word uncle struck the sorcerer like a slap. He froze for a second, then face-bombed with a groan. Child, why would you call this alien for help? What if I weren't a Grand Sorcerer? What if I was just some soul-stealing demon? Still, despite his complaints, there was an odd theatrical flair in his demeanor. His alien pride surged within his frail human frame, and in that moment, a shadow of his true form emerged, tall, glowing with an ominous red hue, 3 crimson eyes piercing through the illusion. I'll help you, child, he declared solemnly, his voice layered with power. But on one condition, give me what's in your hand. The boy froze, wide-eyed. What? Before the child could process the demand, a monstrous screech erupted nearby. Whatever was chasing him was close, too close. Tears welled in the boy's eyes as panic took over. I'll give it. Please just spare me, he cried, clutching the item in his hand as he rushed past the sorcerer. Watching the boy's back, the sorcerer thought with mild irritation, You're running with your back to the predator? That's absurd. At least face your death with dignity. Raising his right hand casually, he motioned toward the area the boy had fled to. The boy turned back, confused, as the sorcerer muttered, Stay back for now. With calm resolve, he prepared to act. As the former head of the 1st Mage Division, the one who defended an entire planet, separating bone from flesh should be child's play. Just one gesture should be enough. He raised his hand to cast a spell. Nothing happened. A beat of silence passed. The boy watched, puzzled. The sorcerer stared at his own hand. Huh? Maybe I'm just tense. New planet, new body, yeah, that must be it, he thought, scratching his head in disbelief. He let out a nervous chuckle as the boy slowly tried to sneak away. Shaking off the awkwardness, the sorcerer decided to try again. This time, an explosion spell.
Nothing.
He attempted a water spell. Nothing again. Desperate, he tried shadow innovation, even ancient curses, every incantation he could recall. Still, nothing worked. His hands began to tremble. He stared down at them, a growing sense of dread taking hold. What is going on? His magic, his lifeline, his power, his pride was gone. Or worse, it was unreachable. And for the first time since reincarnating, he felt truly vulnerable. Chaos erupted on the expressway. The MC, now fully in panic mode, was sprinting for his life from the monstrous creature. Without even glancing left or right, he darted straight into the busy road, narrowly avoiding being hit by an oncoming car. Horns blared, drivers cursed, slamming on their brakes or swerving wildly to avoid him, while others simply froze, dumbfounded by the man who ran like a lunatic across the lanes. Some shouted profanities out their windows, until a monstrous head emerged behind him, peeking out from an alleyway onto the road. The monster, however, remained invisible to the average human eye, so the drivers kept screaming at the MC, unaware of the real threat. But the MC knew. He could feel the heat of the monster's breath, its magical aura bearing down on him like a curse. Damn it, if it sees me again, it'll definitely chase after me. Thinking fast, the MC darted in a random direction, hoping to throw the creature off his trail. But it was already too late. The beast had caught his scent and was now barreling toward him with a violent roar, pushing aside obstacles and crushing everything in its path. Why the hell is it still chasing me? I thought being out on the main road would be safer, he cried out internally as he bolted. I haven't even eaten yet. My body's running on fumes. His breaths were ragged now, his steps clumsy. As he changed directions once again and turned into a side corner, the MC realized things were getting worse. Suddenly, the monster smashed through a moving car behind him, launching itself high into the sky. The MC looked up mid-run, utterly baffled. Wait, it can fly? As he stared, the massive creature tucked its wings and dove, aiming directly for him with claws extended and its body angled like a living missile. Fear surged through him. If this keeps up, I'm gonna die. I'll really be eaten at this rate. Just then, a sharp pain shot through his left knee. He gasped, stumbling. What now? Is this body defective? He tripped, flying into a pile of metal rods and construction debris. Dust and sparks exploded into the air around him as he hit the ground, the monster still closing in fast. Desperately trying to lift himself up, the MC barely managed to glance upward, only to see the monster zipping past him at an insane speed. Its body became a blur as it cut through the air, crashing headfirst into a thick concrete wall just ahead. Boom. The sound echoed like a small explosion. The impact shook the ground, and debris scattered. Instinctively, the MC covered his ears and squeezed his eyes shut from the dust. When he opened them again, red feathers fluttered slowly through the air, drifting down like snow. Staggering to his feet, the MC cautiously approached the crater where the monster had crashed. With a puzzled expression, he stared at the unmoving head embedded in the wall. He kicked lightly at the concrete. It was solid. The monster had slammed into it so hard it knocked itself out. What happened? Did it crash on its own? He muttered aloud in disbelief. Squinting at the bird-like creature, he added, Wait, was this thing bird-brained for real? Analyzing what had just occurred, he scratched his head, internally mocking the absurdity. A creature that flies at a suicidal angle straight into a wall and dies? I want to ask the scholars of Earth, how the hell did such a foolish species come into existence? As the dust began to settle and the adrenaline wore off, the MC suddenly remembered why he'd been outside in the first place. His stomach growled violently. Drool trickled from the corner of his mouth as he stumbled toward the monster's massive, unmoving form. With one hand clutching his belly and the other extended toward the creature, he muttered under his breath about the possibility of it being edible. He touched its feathered flesh, fascinated. It's a species of this planet. If the amino acid structure is even remotely similar, then theoretically, he bit his lip, hungry and curious at once. But just as he reached forward to tear off a piece, a firm voice called out behind him. Startled, the MC turned and saw a woman standing at a distance, frozen in shock. She wore a police uniform and had a steely look in her eyes, though her current expression was more disbelief than authority. That woman was Xian Wuyun, a hunter registered with the city's public security force. Moments earlier, she had received a panicked report from a young boy who had run to their station, shouting that some uncle had gotten caught by the monster instead of him. Urging the team to hurry, She had taken the lead, instructing the others to stay back so she could first assess the danger herself. On her way to the location, her mind raced. The monster in question was known in hunter circles as a beginner killer, a bird-like beast that typically appeared in sandy desert area gates. Originally classified as E-rank, it had become notorious after evolving unexpectedly into a C-rank threat. Its charging speed was now comparable to that of a missile, rendering it lethal to any hunter below C-rank. Anyone under C-rank wouldn't even realize what hit them before they died, she had thought grimly as she sprinted toward the last known location. But nothing had prepared her for the sight she now beheld. There, standing beside the downed creature like a man casually inspecting dinner, was a stranger. Her eyes widened at the eerie smile spreading across his face as he eyed the corpse. "What the hell?" she whispered, confused. "Did he do that?" Alone. Before she could move, the young boy from earlier and another uniformed officer came running up from behind. The boy gasped and froze mid-stride when he saw the scene, while the officer ran toward her, equally surprised. "Hunter Cien Wuyan. What happened here?" the officer asked, still panting. "Uncle, I found the police," the young boy shouted, waving at the MC. The MC blinked, his train of thought interrupted. He glanced up as the others approached, still trying to decide if the monster could be grilled or boiled. The officer smiled as he addressed the MC with gratitude. "Thank you for your hard work, sir. We received a report about a rogue monster attack and rushed over right away, but fortunately, it seems a hunter was already on the scene." "Hunter?" the MC repeated internally, tilting his head slightly. The word felt familiar, yet foreign. He stared blankly, trying to recall if he'd ever heard the term before in this world. Meanwhile, Cien Wuyan watched him closely. Something didn't add up. Was this really a coincidence? She thought. Did he just happen to be passing by and take it down? She narrowed her eyes slightly, still puzzled. The man's clothes were ragged, his demeanor odd, and yet there he was, standing beside a collapsed C-rank monster as if he'd merely swatted a fly. Hunter Cien Wuyan moved closer to the downed creature, kneeling on one knee to inspect it. Her sharp gaze traced the entry point of the impact. She muttered under her breath. "The beginner killer. Killed by angle manipulation. That means he must have lured it to crash intentionally." She glanced up at the man standing nearby, the same odd fellow who had been sucking on ice cream just moments ago. "This species normally appears inside sandy desert-type gates," she recalled. "The terrain inside slows you down. Your feet sink with every step. Fighting inside the gate is a death sentence unless you're high rank. But out here, with solid ground, you could take one down without even lifting a finger if you can predict its trajectory. That kind of precision means, at minimum, a C rank." Just then, the MC caught a glimpse of the young boy who had initially sought his help. With a casual but expectant tone, he called out, "You didn't forget our promise, right?" The boy paused, frowning, clearly reluctant, but seeing no way out of it, he shuffled forward and handed over the half-melted treat he'd been clutching, a fresh tangerine ice cream in an oddly egg-shaped plastic bottle. The MC's eyes lit up. Grabbing it, he turned away without another word and began sucking on it contentedly. As the cold, sweet flavor burst across his tongue, he closed his eyes in bliss. Amazing! So this is Earth's delicacy. Such an incredibly delightful egg. His alien soul hadn't tasted anything in eons. He had long evolved past the need for food, but now, in this human body, every bite was a rediscovery of joy. The policewoman stood, bewildered. "Wait, did he just take that from the kid?" she thought, watching the boy silently shed a single tear for his fallen frozen treat. The MC, meanwhile, stood there shamelessly, squeezing the life out of the ice cream bottle with both hands, completely ignoring the group in front of him. Cien Wuyan cleared her throat. Ahem. The MC finally looked up, still licking the top of the bottle. She took a step forward and extended a hand. "I'm Hunter Cien Wuyan from the association," she said formally. "That was an impressive takedown, no injuries, clean execution. You handled it like a pro." The MC blinked, slightly distracted, then awkwardly reached out and shook her hand. His palm was sticky and slightly cold from the juice leaking out of the ice cream. Yes, he replied absent-mindedly. She gave a polite smile, then discreetly wiped her hand with a handkerchief. Are you a freelance hunter? I haven't seen you around before. Still sucking on the bottle, the MC gave her a confused look. And could you show me your hunter ID? She continued. I'll need it for the report to the association. He froze slightly. Hunter ID? What's that? He thought, blinking slowly while continuing to sip on the remains of the tangerine ice. Is it some kind of local license? Clearly oblivious, he stared at her, his mind running wild as he tried to figure out what she was talking about, without looking like he had absolutely no clue. Realizing he had no idea what a hunter ID even was, the MC made a split-second decision to bluff. Sorry, he said, scratching his head, trying to look casual. I don't have my hunter ID with me right now. Xian Wuyun narrowed her eyes, still crouched near the monster's corpse. I see. Then I'll just have to look you up in the association registry, she replied, rising to her feet. What's your name? The MC froze. Name?
Crap.
What's this body's name? His silence stretched awkwardly. Xian's expression turned sharp.
Wait.
Are you even registered? Did you take the awakening test at all? Her voice rose, laced with sudden alarm. Don't tell me you used your awakened abilities in the middle of a public road without registering? That's illegal. The MC blinked. Awakened? Test? Registry? None of it made sense. He had no idea what she was talking about, and the panic in her voice only made him more anxious. In the background, the young boy was excitedly taking selfies next to the monster's corpse, while the weary policeman tried, and failed, to shoo him away. The MC looked down at his half-empty ice cream bottle and fidgeted nervously. I could really be screwed at this rate. Then, suddenly, he straightened up and spoke with a forced, confident smile. Of course I registered. I just left my hunter ID at home. Xian narrowed her eyes. Really? Yeah, totally, he said quickly. If you wait here, I'll run home and grab it. Before she could respond, he spun on his heel and started walking away, fast, mumbling. Just wait right there. The three others watched him go in silence. I'm never going back down that road again, he muttered to himself. Once he got home, he rifled through the drawers and folders by the low mattress. Finally, he found an ID card, his new Earth identity. Kim Jirian, he read aloud. So that's my name now. But there was no sign of a hunter ID anywhere. Not in the drawers, not tucked inside old envelopes, not in the wallet.
Nothing.
He slumped to the floor. Did this body really not go through hunter registration? Glancing to the side, he noticed several crushed boxes and wrappers scattered around. Curious, he picked one up, peeled it open, and stared at the contents. Thin sticks with burn edges. These are cigarettes. Suddenly, memories surfaced. Cloudy flashes from the body's past. Late nights, smoke-filled rooms, shaking hands lighting another stick. He was a heavy smoker, the MC thought, squeezing the pack tightly in his hand. Frustration boiled over. Damn it, he growled, slamming a fist onto the mattress. Smoking is fatal to wizards, he shouted. The lungs are everything. In Alfieri, his home planet, magic was life itself. Casting spells required the perfect harmony of internal magic and external elemental flow, with the lungs as the vital medium. A damaged respiratory system was like a cracked wand, completely unreliable, borderline useless. No wonder I couldn't cast anything, he yelled, clutching his head in disbelief. Falling to all fours, he shook his head, devastated. What was I thinking? Trading bodies without checking the basics. I was so blinded by the abundance of ambient magic on Earth, I didn't even notice how damaged this vessel was. On Alfieri, something like this would be unthinkable.
Smoking?
Deliberately poisoning your own magic circuits. He sighed and sat back against the wall, cooling off. The anger faded, replaced by quiet resolve. What's done is done, he muttered. Blaming myself won't fix this. He stared at his hands, then glanced around the dimly lit room. There has to be a way to restore this body, he whispered. I escaped that hellish prison on Alfieri. Surely I can fix this. Having calmed down, the MC stood tall in the dim room, clenching his fists.
No.
I won't give up. I'll live here now, and I'll enjoy it. Fully this time. He looked around at his modest surroundings and let out a shaky breath. Despite everything, the ruined lungs, the confusion, the chaos, he felt a strange sense of determination bubbling up. This world might be absurd, but it was also
alive,
colorful, mysterious. I'll make this work. That was the plan, until he got arrested. A few hours later, in a fluorescent-lit interrogation room at the local district office, the MC sat hunched forward on a metal bench, elbows on his knees, hands dangling. His eyes were wide with disbelief as a uniformed officer paced in front of him. Why would someone as capable as you do something this foolish? The officer barked, hands on his hips. I'm sorry, the MC blurted, bowing his head. His voice cracked from the exhaustion and shock of it all. Inside, he was screaming. How did it come to this? I've only been here for a few hours. Everything had spiraled out of control so fast. He thought he was being smart, careful. But somehow, somewhere between pretending to be a registered hunter and walking around with a dead monster behind him like it was a trophy, he triggered some sort of bureaucratic red flag. Maybe it was the lack of ID. Maybe it was the stolen ice cream. Maybe it was the awkward excuse about forgetting his registration. Whatever it was, it had landed him squarely in a holding cell before he even had the chance to figure out what money looked like on this planet. I underestimated this place, he thought grimly. I thought Earth was just a primitive magicless rock, but these people, these systems, they're insane. The officer let out an exasperated sigh, rubbing his temple. You're lucky we're not charging you with impersonation. If not for the eyewitness accounts about the monster, this would be a very different conversation. The MC raised his head slightly, nodding as he tried to appear as regretful and innocent as possible. I didn't mean to cause trouble, he mumbled. The officer gave him a long, skeptical look. You've got one chance. You'd better figure out what game you're playing here.
Kim Gil-yeol.
The MC flinched at the sound of the name.
Kim Gil-yeol.
That's me now, he sighed, leaning back against the wall. The weight of this new life was finally beginning to settle on his shoulders.
No magic.
No allies. A damaged body. And a society that didn't care how powerful you were if you didn't have the paperwork. But still, he had escaped Alfieri. He was free. And despite everything, that counted for something. A small, tired smile tugged at the corner of his lips. All right, Earth, round 2. About 10 minutes had passed since his release, and the MC was already staggering like a ghost down the sidewalk, arms wrapped tightly around himself, stomach growling louder than the passing cars. His legs trembled beneath him, drool collecting at the corner of his lips. So many mysteries about this planet. But first, his thoughts groaned in sync with his stomach. I'm going to die from malnutrition if I don't eat soon. Passers-by gave him a wide berth, eyeing him like he'd just crawled out of a bunker. But then he smelled it. A rich, savory aroma curled through the air and wrapped itself around him. His head snapped up like a hound on a scent trail. Just a few paces ahead, a sign stood boldly in front of a small shop. Sunny's pork soup. Pork soup? He murmured, blinking at the words. He didn't know what that was, but the smell alone had him weak in the knees. He stumbled inside. Moments later, a steaming bowl was placed in front of him. The MC's eyes widened with pure joy. There was food this close. And I went through all that nonsense earlier? He dug in without hesitation, and that was when it hit him. A burst of flavor exploded in his mouth. Hot, savory, thick with depth and soul. His eyes rolled back slightly as his spoon returned to the bowl, again and again, faster than his brain could keep up. It's so hot, it's burning, it hurts, he whined internally, lips tingling, steam fogging up his face. But I can't stop. My hand, it moves on its own. Is this love? The restaurant blurred around him as he fell deeper and deeper into the world of pork soup bliss. Later, the bliss was short-lived. He sat back in a now familiar chair at the local police station, his posture hunched in shame. The officer sighed loudly, pinching the bridge of his nose. Is the country collapsing or something? He muttered. Since when do young people dine and dash like this? I really forgot, the MC exclaimed, hands raised, eyes wide with guilt and genuine hunger-induced confusion. A second voice chimed in from behind. Wait, isn't that the hunter from before? It was the same officer from the monster incident. The MC slowly turned his head and locked eyes with the man, internally screaming, "Please, not you again." The officer narrowed his eyes, then sighed. It's his first offense, right? Let him go this once. The MC bowed so deeply his forehead nearly hit the desk. Thank you. Thank you. I'll pay the restaurant, I swear. That's when the truth slipped out. He hadn't had money in the first place. That's why he got rearrested. As he stood outside the station for the second time that day, the officer from earlier handed him a folded flyer. We found out you're unregistered, the man said, tapping the paper. Most likely awakened recently. Here, try visiting the Awakening Examination Center. The MC blinked, slowly taking the paper. It's free, the officer added with a grin, shouting after him as he walked away. Make sure you get tested. I'm jealous, honestly. The MC stared at the flyer in his hand, stomach full, pride thoroughly dismantled. Earth is terrifying,
he muttered.
But somewhere deep down he was excited. Blankly staring at the crumpled flyer in his hand, MC tilted his head slightly. What is this awakening they keep mentioning? Is it something every earthling's supposed to know by instinct? He mused internally, eyes scanning the bold text and address printed on the paper. Not far from where he stood, the building loomed, a sleek structure buzzing with people walking in and out. Realizing it was nearby and he had nothing better to do, other than not get arrested again, he shrugged. They seem pretty insistent. Might as well check it out. A few minutes later, MC stood outside the Awakening Center, staring up at its polished glass entrance. As he looked at the revolving door, a memory, foreign yet strangely familiar, surfaced. In his mind's eye, he saw Kim Jirio, the original owner of the body, standing awkwardly among a small crowd inside this very building. In his hands was a sheet of paper. Looking closer, MC recognized it. An Awakening rank certification. F rank. The words glared up from the paper like a brand. Snapping back to the present, MC blinked slowly. So, I am registered. Just a disappointment. Just then, a familiar voice called out behind him. Hello, we meet again. Startled, MC turned. It was Xian Wuyun, her short hair slightly tousled, expression curious. Hello, he replied, recovering quickly. She eyed him curiously. What brings you to the association building? And since you're already here, could I finally get that hunter ID? MC froze for a beat. His lie from earlier came crashing back to him. After a brief pause, he exhaled. Actually,
I'm sorry about that.
I panicked last time. The truth is, I don't have a license. Xian raised an eyebrow. I figured something was off when you didn't come back. So that's why. Looking straight at her, MC continued. I am a registered awakened. But I never applied for the card because I was disappointed in my result. Xian blinked.
What?
Disappointed? He shrugged with a casual half-smile.
Yeah.
I'm an F rank. F rank, she repeated, clearly trying to process it. But you caught a beginner killer. That's not something an F-rank hunter can just do. MC nodded solemnly. The stupid bird rammed its head into the wall. He said it so plainly, so deadpan, that Xian was briefly speechless. Her brain scrambled to reconcile what she'd seen with what she was hearing. It's not impossible, she thought. There are rare cases of beginner killers misjudging terrain and killing themselves. But still, her gaze lingered on him. The way he stood so calmly near the monster, his expression back then wasn't normal. It was like someone who's killed dozens, no, hundreds of C-rank monsters. There was no panic, only detachment. A flicker of unease crossed her face. Why would someone hide their real rank? Usually it's the dangerous awakened, those considering illegal activity, that do something like that. She narrowed her eyes slightly, studying his face. You're not lying about your rank, are you? MC looked back at her unfazed. Nope, he said, popping the last piece of gum from his tangerine ice cream bottle into his mouth. F rank. Proud member of the bottom tier club. His expression was unreadable, neither embarrassed nor smug. Just calm. Too calm. Xian stood there, her gaze fixed on MC, studying his unshakable expression. Could he be a dangerous awakened? She wondered, her mind racing. The unsettling calmness in his demeanor made her uneasy. Forcing a nervous chuckle to mask her growing discomfort, she tried to brush off the suspicion, smiling weakly. "Well, you're lucky," she said, voice slightly strained. "Beginner killers are known for being pretty unintelligent." MC, still lost in thought, remembered a detail about Earthlings. They used subtle facial expressions to communicate emotions. "I need to learn that," he thought. In an attempt to appear more friendly, he cracked a wide grin, an unnervingly big one. "That's right. I was really lucky," he said with an overly enthusiastic tone. Cian's smile faltered as she took a step back, her heart racing. What the hell was that expression? She thought, her mind screaming. This guy, he's so suspicious. Her instinct screamed for safety, and without thinking, she pulled out some money she'd forgotten to hand him earlier. "Here," she said, her voice unsteady. "This is for you." MC, momentarily confused, accepted the money. As he felt the crisp bills in his hand, a wave of bliss washed over him. In some places, offering someone money as a greeting, he wondered, marveling at the custom. What a delightful tradition. Where in the universe is there such kindness? He eyed the bills and asked, "But why are you giving me money?" Cian, looking somewhat flustered, explained, "I disposed of the monster's body you left behind. That's your share of the reward." MC, now calculating the worth of the food he'd eaten earlier, couldn't help but let his mind wander. The soup was 8,001 per bowl. With this fluttering paper, I could get about 6 bowls of soup. His eyes glazed over as he salivated at the thought of more of the delicious pork soup.
But
"Wait," he said, blinking in disbelief. "You mean the bird was worth that much? Wasn't it just a monster?" Cian shrugged slightly, her tone informative. Because of the softness of its body, the bird monster itself wasn't worth much as a product. But the 2 C-rank magic stones inside were worth 2,000,001 each. You got a portion of that reward. MC's jaw dropped. "Wait, 2,000,000 each? And I'm only getting 50,001. Cian, almost looking exasperated now, sighed. "The damage caused when you fought the monster, how you didn't handle it properly, it all added up. I processed the reward under my name, and if you hadn't run away like that, you could have legally obtained Hunter's immunity." Her words struck like daggers, leaving MC speechless. He could only mutter an apology, his heart sinking.
I'm sorry.
Cian, unsure of what else to say, turned to leave, her voice soft. "It's all right. Have a good afternoon." MC watched her walk away, his gaze lingering on her retreating form. His fingers tightened around the money in his hand, and he found himself lost in thought. 2,000,001. For a bird that barely even looked dangerous. His mind wandered back to his planet, where a bird like that would have been nothing more than a lowly crawling street bug. As his eyes focused on the crumpled bills, MC did some quick math in his head. 200,001 for a simple twist of the bird's head. That's the price of 75 bowls of soup and rice. He sighed deeply, knowing that to survive in this world, he would need far more than this. Money is essential. He stared at the money again, his thoughts running wild. To live a happy life on Earth, I need more. Much more. A creepy grin slowly spread across his face, and his eyes gleamed with a strange intensity. I have to become a hunter. As MC walked down the busy road, he couldn't help but reflect on the stark contrast between his life before and after his decision to become a hunter. His thoughts drifted back to lunchtime that day, where, just hours ago, he had been lamenting how the previous owner of the body had left him with nothing more than a bowl of soup.
But now?
Now he had a plan. Being a hunter can make me money. The realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. A new world of opportunities had just opened up. Sure, magic wasn't working for him yet, but he was certain that with time and the right monsters it would. His mind, now more focused on survival and opportunity, shifted gears as he glanced around. Standing still in the crowd, he caught sight of something that piqued his interest. An opened gate. A group of civilians stood in awe nearby, all looking at the gate with wide eyes, the air around them buzzing with curiosity. Several Hunter Association guards stood watch, keeping the crowds at bay. And C, intrigued, walked closer to the group, observing their awe. Gates are classified by their magical density. He recalled the information he'd picked up earlier. The higher the rank, the more dangerous the monsters inside. To the Earthlings, gates were both a threat and a playground. Hunters made their living in these spaces, venturing in to fight monsters for both the thrill and the profit. His attention shifted to the mana patterns emanating from the gate. The unusual pattern intrigued him, though he remained unfazed. Monsters live inside these gates, he thought. The idea of analyzing the gate intrigued him even further, but as he looked around at the large crowd, he realized it would be impossible to do so without drawing attention. The press of bodies, the constant movement, there was no way he could get a proper look with all these people around. Looking to the horizon, he wondered if there were other gates around. As if on cue, a large trail of mana caught his attention. He decided to follow it, leaving the busy city behind him, heading for the mountains. The trek wasn't easy. The path was steep, and the climb almost killed him, but he pressed on, determined to see where the mana trail would lead. Finally, after a grueling ascent, he reached the top of the mountain. But his eyes widened when he noticed something peculiar, a police control line. At first, he assumed it was just another strange Earthling decoration. Why else would they put plants on a mountain trail? Shrugging off his confusion, he slipped his hand into his pocket, casually walking toward the gate, unfazed by the control line. Just as he passed the barrier, he heard the unmistakable sound of approaching footsteps. He turned to see a team of hunters, their confident strides signaling their intent. The team leader, Yoon Sung-ah, was already on his phone, speaking to a manager back at the Hunter Association. The conversation was brief, but the manager's tone was laced with frustration. "Have you seen these recent gate mutations?" he asked, his voice sharp. "I've lost count at this point. What are you going to do about it?" Sung-ah assured him the investigation would start immediately, and hung up the phone with a click. As he walked towards the team, he gestured for them to move forward. They all stepped confidently toward the gate, their bodies brimming with energy and readiness. But the moment they crossed the threshold, a series of complaints rippled through the team. "Ugh, what's that smell?" one of them muttered, wrinkling their nose. "Probably just the cave smell. It is midsummer, after all," another team member added, trying to mask their discomfort with humor. MC watched the group as they entered, a part of him eager to follow. His mind raced, contemplating his next steps. If he was going to survive and thrive, he needed to adapt quickly. And it seemed the gates, with their monster-filled interiors, were the perfect place to start. Sung-ah glanced down at his watch, a frown settling on his face as he analyzed the details of the gate. "This gate's classified as D rank," he muttered, his voice laced with a tinge of concern as he examined the internal magical density readings on his device. One of his team members, the glasses-wearing guy, chuckled darkly and shook his head. "It's always like this. Whenever something goes wrong with a gate, the monster rank jumps 2 whole levels." He flashed a grin, clearly unfazed by the situation. "Let's wrap this up quick and grab a drink afterward. The quicker we're out, the better." Sung-ah's unease deepened. He glanced around, his fingers tapping nervously against the hilt of his weapon. "Should we slow down a bit? It feels like we're moving too fast. We've been this deep into the dungeon, but we haven't seen a single monster yet." His voice carried a sense of foreboding, like a warning he couldn't quite shake off. The glasses guy, who seemed the most relaxed of the group, chuckled and patted Sung-ah's head, shaking his own in mock disbelief. "You're too timid for someone so young, Sung-ah. You've got us, A-rank hunters, on your team. What's there to worry about?" His words were meant to comfort, but Sung-ah's worry only grew as he scanned the surroundings, feeling the tension in the air. Just as he was about to respond, something caught his eye, a massive shadow looming over them. Sung-ah's stomach dropped as he looked up and saw a colossal golem-like monster standing directly behind the glasses guy. Its stone-like hand was poised, ready to swing down with terrifying force. "Watch out!" Sung-ah shouted, his voice urgent and panicked. The glasses guy turned just in time to see the massive hand descending toward him, but it was too late. The sheer size and speed of the golem made it nearly impossible to avoid. At that moment, Jiraiya was seen walking through a hollow, cave-like tunnel. He found himself wondering if he had reached the deeper parts of the dungeon. The silence was unsettling. No monsters had appeared so far. Perhaps, he thought, he had misunderstood the gate entirely. As he continued moving forward, something caught his eye, a swirling line of mana in the air. Curious, he extended his hand to touch it, then traced it visually as it floated ahead. The mana stream was oddly faint and unrefined, but it pulsed with life. That puzzled him. Could it belong to a human? And if so, was someone else already inside this dungeon? Following the trail cautiously, he neared a bend in the cave. Just as he reached it, faint sounds echoed from beyond. He quickly pressed himself against the stone wall, hiding while trying to make sense of what he was hearing. Then, peeking around the corner, he spotted something that made his eyes narrow in disbelief. A massive stone golem towered above a group of people in combat. Blood dripped from its hands as it loomed over the others like a predator. To the golem, the hunters looked like ants, weak and insignificant. It charged again, and Jiraiya's gaze quickly fell to two members of the group, a man wearing glasses and another figure, both lying motionless and bleeding on the ground. Panic erupted among the surviving teammates. They screamed in shock, unable to process the deaths that had happened in a single devastating blow. Sung-ah, trying to restore order, shouted at them to stay calm and focus. One wrong move would mean death for them all. But before he could say more, a voice shouted a warning. Someone screamed for Sung-ah to look out. He spun around just in time to see the golem's massive fist descending toward him. In a flash, he activated his magic shield, bracing for impact. The collision sent a shockwave through the cave. Sung-ah didn't falter. Using his shield, he slammed it into the ground to anchor himself, creating a crater beneath him from the sheer force. Sparks from the shield's magic energy lit up the dim surroundings, and arcs of lightning crackled along the golem's arm, causing chunks of stone to shatter and fall. Sung-ah, gathering all his remaining strength, leapt into the air with astonishing force. A vivid flash of blue magic trailed behind him as he charged straight at the golem, landing a powerful blow. From his concealed position behind the stone wall, Jiraiya remained hidden, silently observing. He was genuinely impressed by Sung-ah's boldness and power. Moments later, the enormous golem lay motionless on the ground. Sung-ah, breathless and drained, sat atop its fallen body. Behind him, his surviving teammates watched in awe, admiration clear in their eyes. As Sung-ah slowly opened his eyes, he could faintly hear the chatter of his two remaining comrades. As expected of Sung-ah, one of them murmured with a mix of relief and pride. "He's part of the A-class defensive group," the other added. "But still, an A rank is an A rank," the woman said, her voice trailing off as they gazed at the defeated creature. Without warning, Sung-ah stood up abruptly and announced that he would retrieve Cheolmin's body, their fallen teammate with glasses. He instructed the others to start heading back slowly. But then, a chilling feeling crept over him. That familiar sensation, like he was being watched. He spun around, eyes wide, but it was too late. The golem, not dead but merely stunned, lunged forward and seized him in its massive hand. Fear surged through Sung-ah as the golem slammed him violently into the ground. He coughed up blood, the impact too much for his battered body. Unconscious, he dangled limply as the golem lifted him again and squeezed tightly before hurling him across the cavern, his body crashing hard into a stone wall. Sung-ah, the male teammate, cried out in horror. The golem didn't stop. It reached for a massive stone slab from the floor and flung it toward the group with brutal force. With no time to think, the surviving male hunter dashed forward, sword in hand. He struck the mountain-like dungeon wall with full force, managing to slice it in two. But as the dust settled, he noticed something terrifying. His blade had snapped clean in half. His eyes followed the broken piece as it spun through the air, distracting him for a split second. It was enough. The golem surged forward, striking him with overwhelming power. The impact sent him flying, landing hard just behind his female teammate. Frozen in terror, she turned around and saw her fallen comrade at her feet. She looked up and there it stood. The golem loomed directly over her, its eyes glowing, its massive arm raised to crush her where she stood. Heart racing, she threw her arms over her face in a desperate attempt to shield herself, bracing for the final blow. At the last possible moment, Sangha rushed in, barely managing to intercept the golem's fatal strike with his magic shield. Blood trickled down his forehead, and his body trembled from the force of the blow. Turning to the terrified girl behind him, he shouted urgently, his voice strained, "Use your binding magic, now. If we can't restrain this thing, we'll all die here. The entire team will be wiped out." He continued, holding up the shield with sheer willpower, but after a few seconds, he realized nothing was happening. Confused and frustrated, he turned around to urge her again, only to see her running. She had turned her back on him, fleeing the battlefield without hesitation. His heart sank. Staring at her retreating figure, he thought in disbelief, "Where are you going? Are you really leaving me here alone? What about Chiolmin? Is this really how it ends?" In that same moment, he caught sight of their remaining male teammate, barely crawling away from the scene, his body drenched in sweat. Desperate and broken, the man silently begged, "Please don't run. Don't leave us like this." But no one answered. The shield, already weakening under the golem's relentless assault, began to crack, thin fractures spidering across its surface. A final, devastating punch from the golem shattered it completely. With an earth-shaking thud, the golem's massive fist crashed into Sangha, slamming him into the ground with unbearable force. Blood pooled beneath him as he lay motionless, eyes fading. In his final moments of clarity, Sangha didn't feel sorrow, only emptiness. He thought back to his awakening as an air ink during a dungeon break. Back then, offers had poured in from prestigious guilds. He had made connections, built a solid team, and steadily rose in the ranks with countless successful gate conquests. He could still see himself smiling alongside his teammates. But now, to think it would all end like this, he thought bitterly. So miserably. The golem loomed over him once more, lifting its enormous foot for the finishing blow. Then, out of nowhere, a stone flew through the air and struck the golem, causing it to pause. Its head snapped in the direction the stone had come from. Standing there, just a short distance away, was Jirio. The mysterious man had finally stepped out from his hiding spot, arms still casually tucked into his pockets. He stared up at the golem, visibly annoyed. "TCH, I really can't stand this," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Is this just the way Earthlings are? Betraying each other so easily?"
He sighed.
"Well, thanks to all that, I've completed my analysis." The golem locked eyes with him, slowly turning to face this new challenger. Jirio remained still, calm, unfazed. Up close, he examined the creature. "You're actually much clearer than I expected," he said nonchalantly, "but pretty outdated looking." Then, as if he were greeting an old acquaintance, he offered a slight smile.
"Well,
"Nice to meet you, golem." As the scene shifted, the narrator began to explain more about golems. On screen, a golem resembling a knight stood tall, its body emanating a faint blue aura. The main character, Jirio, described it as a clay construct animated by mana, serving as a power source. In the ancient nation of Alfieri, golems had been indispensable, used in a wide range of functions from daily chores, labor, and deliveries to construction, and even war. Alfieri, he noted, had been a civilization built on the backs of golems. Jirio, completely unshaken by the sight, casually recalled that he himself had majored in golem weaponry. Speaking aloud, he deduced the reason no monsters had appeared in the dungeon was because the golem had been serving as a guard. Judging from the setup, this gate seemed to be privately owned. With a calm demeanor, he walked toward the hulking creature, remarking that since he had already awakened the sentry, escaping the situation without a fight was no longer an option. Pulling his hands from his pockets, Jirio mentally prepared to take it down. Even without magic, he reminded himself, there were still other ways to fight. As if responding to the challenge, the golem charged with its fist raised, ready to crush him. Jirio remained composed, simply adjusting the sleeves of his suit. Then, with flawless timing, he leapt out of harm's way just as the golem's punch struck the ground with massive force. Without pause, the golem lunged again. Jirio narrowly avoided a blow aimed straight at his face. It lifted its massive arms once more, attacking with enough force to shatter the stone floor, but again, Jiraiya dodged in time. Sweat dripped down his face as he began to second-guess his earlier bravado. Sure, he had spoken with confidence, but the reality was far from easy. Though he could evade most of the attacks thanks to the golem's size and lack of agility, his current body was simply too frail. Breathing heavily, Jiraiya stopped briefly to catch his breath, looking utterly drained, as if he were hanging by a thread. But the golem showed no signs of letting up. It charged forward again with terrifying speed. Jiraiya, pushing past exhaustion, bent his body backward in a desperate motion and dodged the blow by a hair's breadth once more. The golem creaked slightly as it twisted its massive body, swinging a powerful punch toward Jiraiya, who now stood directly in its path. Reacting swiftly, Jiraiya leaned back and narrowly avoided the attack. But the golem didn't give him time to breathe. It struck again almost immediately. This time, Jiraiya wasn't quick enough to fully recover his stance. He dodged, but fell hard onto the ground, landing on his hands and backside. The force of the punch had driven the golem's arm deep into the cave floor, and now it struggled to pull its arm free. It wasn't budging. Sensing an opportunity, Jiraiya's eyes lit up. He pushed himself off the ground and sprinted toward the immobilized golem. As he ran, he explained the golem's weakness. The large purple gem embedded in its arm wasn't just ornamental. It functioned as a magical energy detection sensor. If he could input the emergency stop command into the sensor, he could neutralize the golem. A flashback from his world revealed that for security reasons, only the creator or owner of a golem typically knew the emergency shutdown command. However, Jiraiya pointed out that this particular model was so outdated, he could decipher its shutdown code with just a glance. Sliding to a stop beside the gem, he began inscribing glowing magical characters into the air. A bluish neon light radiated around him, a luminous halo forming behind his back. The moment he finished the sequence, the golem's eyes flared red, then dimmed as its body collapsed heavily to the ground. Climbing onto the fallen golem, Jiraiya clarified that he had only activated the emergency stop. The golem wasn't fully shut down. To truly disable it, he needed to switch it to offline mode. That meant removing the core. He walked along the golem's back until he reached its center, where a dull, gray oval-shaped gem lay embedded, completely devoid of light. Kneeling down, Jiraiya examined the core. With a reluctant sigh, he muttered to himself that he really wasn't fond of pulling out cores barehanded, especially without proper tools. But given the circumstances, he didn't have much of a choice. With a firm grip, Jiraiya lifted the gem tab. A soft blue light spilled out, revealing a glowing, orb-like core connected to several thin tubes that snaked deep into the golem's interior. Without hesitation, he reached into the compartment, grasped the luminous orb, and yanked it out with a sharp tug. The tubes tore away with a snap, releasing a shower of tiny sparks that flickered and died in the air. The golem's face dimmed, its once burning eyes dulled to nothing, and the last faint glimmer of energy drained from the core, now resting in Jiraiya's hand. Staring at the glowless orb, he muttered calmly, almost to himself, simple. The scene cut to Sangha, his motionless body still sprawled on the cave floor, blood streaking down his back. For a moment he looked completely lifeless. Then, his fingers twitched. As he lay bleeding, a memory surfaced, one that pierced through the haze of pain. He recalled the conversation he'd had with his mother the day he decided to become hunter. She had looked at him with concern, her voice trembling slightly as she said, "I understand you want to be a hunter, but do you realize how dangerous it is?" Looking at her with gentle determination, Sangha had reassured her. "Don't worry, Mom. I might not look it, but I'm an A rank awakened." Still, her worry lingered in her eyes. "I'm not saying you can't. I respect your choice. But if something happens to you..." He had gently cut her off, holding her hand and smiling. "Mom, I'm a recognized hunter now. Just trust me this once. I'll make you proud, I promise. You'll see my name among the best." As he turned to leave, she had called after him with a bright smile. "Yoon Sangha." He looked back, surprised. "Be careful out there, all right?" The memory faded, and we returned to the present. Blood trickled down Sangha's face as he shakily pushed himself off the ground. His vision blurred, but he caught sight of something. Above him stood a young man on top of the now-defeated golem, casually examining its lifeless core. Sung-ah blinked.
What?
What happened? Did he take that thing down barehanded? Still focused on the core, Jiryo seemed unaware, or perhaps uninterested, in Sung-ah's gaze. However, when he finally glanced to the side and noticed him, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. A hunter? Jiryo mused silently, unimpressed. He dropped the core to the ground with a dull thud and began walking towards Sung-ah. Panicking, Sung-ah tried to steady himself, but his body wouldn't cooperate. He's coming. Damn it, I still can't move properly. As Jiryo approached, Sung-ah struggled to lift his head. And there he was. The mysterious man was already standing in front of him. Hey, Jiryo said calmly, his voice startling Sung-ah more than he expected. Do you need help? He asked, extending a hand toward him.